Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining in. All right. So, good morning. I'm Abdulla Al Jowder. I work with the Information and E-Government Authority. Before I begin, I would like to start off with actually an introduction of what we do here in IGA. Basically, the Information E-Government Authority, or the IGA, is the entity responsible for driving the transformation and the entity responsible for the national ICT initiatives in Bahrain. We collaborate with all the entities in Bahrain to try and transform and improve the public services through adapting different technologies and emerging technologies. And one of these technologies is the artificial intelligence, of course, which is the base of today's conference. Um, what we do in IGA basically is to try and improve the government sector and try and maybe provide better government services to the public using different technologies. And we work closely with the government entities to try and provide the best experience when it comes to the services. Um, Before I start talking about the Be Aware application, I wanted to highlight a few points when it comes to AI and the role that could be played here in combating the pandemic that we are living in this day and age. Um, there were a few points that could come to mind when we were thinking about that point. These actually include to try and understand the virus and try and accelerate the medical research on the treatments that could be available to combat the virus. Since this is a new virus, it's something that was not studied well before it happened, before the widespread. So there were also applications when it comes to AI by trying to detect and diagnose the virus and predict its evolution cycles. There are areas where AI could be used to assess and prevent the spread of the virus and try and implement contact tracing in a more efficient way. AI could also be used into responding to the health crises that could happen in the community through the use of AI to analyze personalized information and learning from this information, and also to monitor and recover by improving the early warning tools. Um, Now, in light of the directions of, or in light of the visions of His Majesty the King and the direction of His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and Prime Minister, we were assigned a task to actually try and use AI basically to try and assist and prevent and preventing the spread of the virus. Now, with this in mind, we were also instructed to be very careful with the human rights and the user's privacy. So the direction was to try and think of a way to implement a mobile application to try and help in reducing the spread of the virus. So with that in mind, we went back and we thought, um, uh, because the government, the kingdom has an excellent infrastructure of telecommunication, and to leverage the high mobile penetration rate, and because we have the supportive legislative infrastructure in the country, we could probably try something out with artificial intelligence and use mobile applications, which is one of the area of our expertise here at IGA, to try and limit the spread of the virus. Now, One of the key objectives that we had at that time, of course, like many other countries, is to control the spread and try to relieve the pressure on the medical staff. So we tried to do that using AI and big data analytics. As you all know, the data is the main driver for the AI in many applications, as my previous colleagues have mentioned. And we worked closely with the Supreme Council of Health, Ministry of Health, as well as the National Task Force for combating the coronavirus in the Kingdom of Bahrain to develop a mobile application that can be used in many ways to help prevent and slow the spread of the virus. So just to give you a glimpse of the Be Aware app in Bahrain, this is the official app that we use here in Bahrain and recognized by the government as well as World Health Organization. We developed it in a way to become a source of information and always available access to information about the COVID-19 developments in the country and abroad. It is provided in 6 languages to ensure that it reaches the majority of the population living in Bahrain. The aim of it is to protect the citizens and the residents in an attempt to prevent the interaction with positive cases and therefore limiting the spread of the virus. The system itself on which the app was built uses AI technologies and big data analytics to process a very large amount of data that I'll briefly explain in a very short periods of time and based on cloud technologies. So the excellent cloud infrastructure that we have and the strong collaboration that we have with AWS today help us actually rapidly develop and introduce this app in a matter of 6 days to be precise. Users using this app were alerted if they approached an active case or a suspected case so that social distancing can be observed and limit the spread of the virus. There were few services introduced in the app, such as booking test appointments, issuing certificates, PCR certificates, looking at viewing the test results, and also some other services, one of which is the declaration for those traveling abroad. So when we want to talk about the AI and where it fits in the application, there are various areas that we've implemented AI in the application. For example, one of the main AI areas is to try and implement contact tracing and try and fast track the contact tracing process through the use of AI to improve the accuracy of the contact tracing and to ensure that it is done with minimum or close to no human intervention. Why I say minimum? Because the traditional way of contact tracing usually happens by interviews, talking to the patient, who did you see, and sometimes memory would not serve us well in actually remembering those people, and maybe we have spread this virus to people who we don't know. So what we try to do is to use AI for those actually who have the app to try and improve the accuracy of the contact tracing and introduce and identify people who we might have missed through the contact tracing review process. Um, Another area is to actually systematically exclude false positive location readings that we use through the devices, because the wide range of devices available in the market, the different accuracy levels of the devices, there were some readings that were, were not accurate and were raising flags as for the contact tracing to be there. But we found out that there were several false positive cases, And then through the use of AI, we were able to refine the accuracy here. We use AI in facial recognition to verify the photos that are taken by those cases who are under self-isolation to ensure their adherence to the self-isolation guidelines. And we use big data analytics to cross-match these locations to try and prevent the spread of the virus by alerting the users of the app. What we try to leverage here is to, because it's a mobile application, because we want people to use it more frequently, we introduce a wide range of services. We had put in services related to COVID, information related to COVID, decisions and regulations that have been enforced or taken place due to the pandemic, as well as some guidelines and information on how to prevent the spread and to stay safe. And this is a quick rundown of the services that we are providing so far. Still, there are more services, and we are working on as the situation develops, and the turnaround or the time to market for these services is very high due to the technologies that we have. The main features, as a quick rundown of the features. Main features, as I mentioned earlier, we cross-match the locations, which is done basically without any human intervention. This is done completely by the system. The identification of suspected persons who might have come across the disease, and the notification is also happening automatically. It sends notification to alert people who are suspected of being positive or maybe have contracted the virus to actually go and test, and allows them to book the appointment and actually go and do the test without any human intervention. The app also provides, as I said, information and real-time statistics about COVID cases in Bahrain and globally. It provides a list of the decisions and resolutions related to the pandemic that has been taken by the government and the National Task Force, as well as some information and guidelines about the pandemic. The services that we provide, as I mentioned, test results, which is basically done with collaboration with the Ministry of Health through an integration with their system. Booking self-isolation tests, drive-through tests, the recently introduced rapid test, actually, which can be done at home by all the users who actually can go to the pharmacies and do the test. A list of these pharmacies is available, and a way of submitting such results is also available in the app. One of the major areas in the app, or the major area in the app, is to actually monitor the self-isolation cases in a way that we ensure that they are adhering to the guidelines, as well as their whereabouts is also confined within their isolation space. So the phone itself is connected through GPS and Bluetooth using the app. It sets a home isolation quarantine, and if there is a breach to the geofence, it sends an alert. The app shows a countdown of the isolation of the selected period and within the selected location. So as I mentioned earlier, there are random photo requests to basically make sure that the person is adhering to the guidelines, as well as the tamper-proof, the integration with the tamper-proof bracelet. The overall framework of the Be Aware is actually massive. The system is actually feeding into the data that we collect, is feeding into an AI engine that actually helps many entities to do their job efficiently. So as I mentioned, we have screens for Ministry of Health workers to monitor the active cases, the positive cases, in their home locations, where they can report their symptoms on a daily basis to prevent them from actually having to call each and every case. There are screens to monitor the cases and basically the reports based on the numbers that are happening each and every day. We integrate with different database centers, national database centers, to feed in the numbers to help actually make the decision-making process much more informed and much more easier. The Ministry of Interior uses the system also to actually deal with the flags that are raised by the system about the adherence, so they can get in touch with the cases, make sure that they are adhering to the guidelines of the home isolation. And last but not least, the National COVID-19 call center also is provided with an access to the system, where they can provide the necessary support and the data entry that they need for the calls that they receive for reporting such cases. So it's really, the app is merely a small portion, forefront of a bigger, let's say, framework in the background. And it's all based on AI and data analytics. The last point which I wanted to touch upon is basically the privacy protection part, and which I mentioned earlier in the presentation. Um, this is a big deal for us, because we are collecting huge amounts of data. So we wanted to take care of what we do with this data, who gets access to this data, and how we actually make use of such data. So basically, we use cloud technologies, as I mentioned, to store such data and make sure that it is away from human intervention. We built around this data to make sure that the access to this data is happening systematically, and only try and make to raise flags and trigger events based on this data. And we actually took into consideration the personal data protection law that is in effect here, to ensure the high standard of data protection. And the information that we collect based on the app usage is kept for up to 6 weeks, and then it is deleted actually, and is used only for contact tracing. Of course, all the information is encrypted. The security and the privacy safeguards of the mobile applications within the other countries also that implemented such approach were also reviewed and considered. We went through the GDPR policies and the different applications that were there before the Be Aware app, which I must mention here is, I think, the fast adoption of this application in Bahrain made worldwide organizations actually recognize the experience of Bahrain and the fast adoption of such application. Also, the app is actually optional to download, except the cases where they have to undergo home isolation, which are actually mandatory to download, because their adherence to the guidelines needs to be ensured. For anyone wishing to opt out of the app, the process is really clear. You just uninstall the app, and the old data, once the time comes and the 6 weeks elapse, the old data will automatically be deleted, and again, without any human intervention. The users can still request their data to be deleted before the 6 weeks period, even if they've just finished home isolation and they want their data to be deleted. And we have actually done that for quite a number of people who have requested it. So this also goes in line with the privacy protection part. This is what I have for you today. It's a big topic for us because we've put a lot of effort in this, but this is what time permits, and I hope I've tried, to deliver at least a glimpse of what we did for COVID using AI, and these are the social media accounts that we have on IGA, and we would be glad to actually get in touch with you on our social media and the National Contact Center, the Contact Center for Government Services. And I hope you never need the medical COVID-19 contact center number. And I hope you stay safe. And thank you very much for the opportunity and for